four, three, two, one. All right, welcome to another edition of the BBK podcast. This is number 122, the NFL Draft 2021 edition, and some other stuff. We have Seth on with us once again. Welcome back, Seth.
Nice to be here, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. The last time I had a podcast with you, I was outside, but it was a little more chilly. Today we have like about I think an 85 or 86 degree day here in Homewood, Illinois. So enjoying it. Had a good round of golf today, so I'm all excited about the draft coming up and just excited to have you on again. So thanks for joining again.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So before we get into the draft talk, and I'll separate this out on both Twitter and the YouTube posting of this, but the first part is just going to be Seth discussing some of my previous guests. So if you want to fast forward to the designated spot of where I post the NFL draft talk, I'll let you guys know that. But to start, we're going to go back to a topic that kind of started back in November. I think it was right around the election, if I remember.
It had to be because it was right after my election podcast with Rufus and Jeff.
Yeah. So just a little bit of a backstory. Seth wasn't aware of the history of the podcast, and he has some thoughts about some of the guests that I've had on here. If you want to mention them by name, you can.
I'm going to just start at the beginning and just ask you a question. Like Hustle Double and Eskeith, whoever that is, touts or no?
No.
Okay, that's good.
No.
Steph and Callie.
Nope. No, she was a caller from the Dan Patrick show. I don't know if she still calls into that or not, but yeah, I was big into the Dan Patrick show at the time, so I had some people on from there.
Patrick show was great. I'm glad you got her. All right, Black and Teal.
No, he was on Twitter. The last time he was on was like 5 or 6 years ago. He was I don't know what's happened to him, but yeah, I don't think he ever did anything with
Okay. B10 Trick.
I think that's Bubba. He has I know he does stuff with fantasy sports now. I don't know like what.
Is he a fantasy sports tat or?
I don't really know. Like I haven't. Okay. I don't really dive into like people's what they're if they have affiliate links or anything like that. I'm guessing affiliate links would be the.
They're not great, my man. They're not great.
No, but no, like I said, I don't know. I don't. I see his tweets come in, but I don't. I don't actively like pay attention to like if they have like links on them or anything like that.
All right, Sam Fredible.
No, it wasn't even really a gambling guy. He was somebody I knew lived in the Chicago area, and I just bullshit with him for a little bit.
Just a heads up, it's getting pretty breezy around where you are.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's gonna.
We can roll with it, but I just want to let you know we hear it.
Okay.
Parlay Queen.
Yeah, that's she was on covers, so yeah, I mean that's.
Okay, we have our first one. Very nice, very nice.
So,
broke a cherry.
So
Tom F18.
Yeah, it's my friend Tom. I think he was like a last minute fill-in. He lives in San Diego. He's just a degenerate. I've gone to Vegas with him a bunch of times.
Okay.
No tout stuff.
That's fine. Jort Sports.
Jort's a good dude. Him and the next guy, DJen Capper, they both came to Chicago for my Twitter bachelor party. They were the only two that we like the month before my wedding. They came out and we went to some bar near Wrigley Field and went out on the town.
Oh, I hope you all had a wonderful time.
Yeah, no tout affiliations with either of those guys.
SP Betting One.
Possibly. I'm not even sure. I haven't seen him in a long time, but other people might be able to know that. This was probably when I wasn't really doing a job of vetting for that, but it's possible.
All right, just to be clear for the people who are listening up, these were all just week after week after week after each other. It wasn't irregular times like they are now.
Yeah.
All right, Hayden and Chris Kelly.
No, I think those guys have been haven't dabbled in that. I think they just post degenerate bets. I know they were big on the Gonzaga train this year, but no,
That train
like
went really well until it crashed.
yeah. So then
More good.
The next one is Colin, Chris, and Hayden. Yeah, Colin's with the uh, Action Network.
Okay, so that's up to 2, and I
yeah.
see more credible in Sports by John.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, that's nothing there. They're good dude. Oh, I guess I skipped over.
You did, but that's fine.
Okay, yeah, no. Both of those guys, as far as I know, I haven't talked to John in a while, but as far as I know, I don't think he's been tied to anything tout related.
All right, so then we have Colin, Chris, and Hayden.
Yep, and then you might remember Shane Irving from
Shane Irving.
Patrick's show. One of the nicest guys I've ever met through Twitter. Actually,
that's cool.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
And then we have Jen and Blind Capper.
Yep, Blind Capper. He's old. He's an OG of the Twitter world. He's a he books bets. I'm actually gonna have him on again. He's a good dude.
Cool. And then we have Chris, Colin, and Hayden again. Colin and Chris Kelly. So the next new one is PGA Brian.
Yeah, that one I haven't taught. I don't think that guy tweets anymore, and I don't remember him doing anything tout related.
So then we have Number Runner and PT Sports Capper.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't think either one of those guys just posted their bets. I don't think they actually touted anything.
So here we've now come to what is going to be the single most embarrassing person you've had on in your entire list. You actually end up having him on twice, and it's David Perdum. And obviously not a tout, but something indescribably worse in some ways because he's a shill, and I can't even imagine what kind of value he could have brought to the show.
I don't even remember what the topics were. With
you had him on twice,
shows.
so that's a good sign. All right, Hook'em Houday.
I haven't. I think he unfollowed me a while back, but no, I don't think he hit any tout.
Okay, Bulldog.
Nope. He's a good dude. I haven't talked to him. I don't talk to him that much, but he's just he's big into wrestling and Cardinals baseball.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah.
So we've now entered the asylum part of the show. Best of luck to Linda Train.
Yeah, I hope he's doing well. I haven't had a chance to talk to him in a while, but I hope he's doing well.
And now we have the Sports Cheetah and Zona Cats.
Yeah, you're familiar, I think, with both of them, at least with Cheetah. So that was
them online.
Yeah, that was the memorable part of that one was the Bitcoin discussion, because that's when I think Bitcoin.
Well, I hope you all bought into that fairly heavily because this is back in October of 2014.
Yeah, and actually, disclosure, I because of that podcast, I actually got like a Bitcoin tip from one of our listeners here, Occam's Edge, because he hadn't heard about Bitcoin up until that particular episode. He actually tipped me a little bit of Bitcoin this year that has doubled in value. So that was kind of a nice treat there.
I'll turn into some beer at some point. All right.
Yeah.
Now we have Spreadopedia.
Yep, you know him. He had the database with the trends, but I think he even acknowledged that there wasn't really much to that. So I don't know if that counts in your definition.
So, we'll talk more later about it in a bit. But Seth Partnow, which is, if I believe correctly, he ended up working for a team or
the Bucks.
Bucks.
Yeah,
okay.
The Bucks. Yeah, and I think he's back to. Just doing. I think he's writing a analytics book or something. So yeah, he was.
So then
he brought some good insight into NBA.
I'm sure he did. So then we have Jor Cubs Dan.
Yeah, he's like college basketball nerd. I don't know. I know that like he had like a blog that he like posted like some bets, but I don't actually know if he bet. So I don't know like how you classify people like that.
All right, so here's actually another insane person, Alan Boston.
Yep. Yeah, I don't need to get into that.
A surprising get, actually, although I guess not really after you got Seth Partnow and whatever else David Purdom, but yeah, I was just a little surprised.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That was actually initiated initially by Colin, I think. Um, Colin Wilson had like talked to him at some point, so like he was like the bridge to get the Alan Boston. So that's kind of where Alan Boston started.
so then we have Cullen's totals.
Yeah, I think from what I know now, I think he like he wasn't at the time, but like I think like 2 years ago started selling um, his totals.
Okay, then
So it was it
solo.
was recently.
Okay,
So yeah, solo, and then the 38 there. That's a couple people. I ran a NFL like spread, like a style in the format of the Vegas contest. So those are two people that won it. The Olivier and Phila 76.
well, good. Congrats to them. Then we have
Yeah.
Linda Train,
Yep.
and then this is where we're pretty obviously dirty, Stucky.
Yeah.
You know,
At the time, you know,
you
for
were
me that was
young and you needed the money. I get it.
yeah. No, yeah, I didn't get any money, obviously, but
I know.
yeah. But at the time, it was a pretty big get for me, just because at the time, I think he had like, obviously, I'm trying to get some earballs listening to it. So, at the time, I
Sure.
don't think I don't remember when Action Network started. I think that was a few years later.
Just so you know, it's actually really windy, and for the football part, we should probably like separate the two parts. Have the football
Okay.
part be while you're inside.
Okay. Yeah. I'll stop it. Yeah.
Once we finish this part, that's fine. Sorry, let's start moving quickly. You read the names. Let me know if any of them are touts when you see them.
Okay. So, Wes Reynolds, Vegas guy, Margot Sports, and Jimmy James. Jimmy James left Twitter, but I don't know if he's under a different name. Let's see, as far as new ones goes, MLB model. Well, yeah, I think he went to the dark side. Um, let's see, anonymous gambler, MLB Dream Picks, who I think he's with MLB model. Like, a good guy. Like, I know MLB Dream Picks has always reached out to me when I've had issues. So like you said in your outline before, as far as like the selling of picks go, like I'll say that I definitely don't advocate for the selling of picks, and I try not to promote that end of it. But I could see why my participation in having certain people on might give the impression that I was promoting that, and for that I've definitely learned my lessons with that. um I don't know how much of this list you want to go through, because it gets up to 120
No,
something. So
let's actually stop here because the point has been made. But like since then, you've had Grooven on multiple times, and he clearly was okay with it. Like not okay with it, but okay with you, which is a different issue.
yeah.
And you had Vegas Watch on. Um, I admittedly did not know your past, but like now is a good time to talk. Like you had Sprague on,
Yep.
and I want to listen to that podcast later just because I had no idea that he came onto your pod. But
Yeah.
I'm going to read the chart aloud, and this is a flow chart, which also serves as a proof if you remember proofs from high school or college or whatever else. Should you buy picks from a tout? Question one: does the tout bet his picks first? If the answer is no, he doesn't. He's not willing to bear the risk of betting his picks, but he's asking you to pay for the privilege to do the same. Fuck him. Don't give him a penny. Easy enough. No, he's undercapitalized and therefore can't take full advantage of his own genius. If he had the ability to determine positive EV bets, he wouldn't be undercapitalized. Fuck him. Don't give him a penny. Again, even if you have a very small bankroll, and if you're positive EV, you can grind out your edge over time and build yourself up.
Agreed.
All right, next question. No, he doesn't bet his own picks. He would, but no bookie will accept his action because he's so sharp. Jesus fucking Christ. Bullshit. Fuck him. Don't give him a penny. Pinnacle, Chris, Circa, which is a new one on the block these days, the Asian books. There are plenty of books happy to take sharp action, large sharp action, and will earn off of you. No. Then there are people who do bet their picks. Do the lines move when he bets them? Well, no. Is this a big market like, and I apologize if I'm moving a little fast. Let me slow down a bit. Do the lines move when he bets them? No. Is it a big market like the NFL, English Premier League, or is it a small market like college hoops, totals, or fucking curling or whatever? Let's say it's a big market. If he actually had an edge on the market this big, he'd either A, be rich as fuck, aka Golden House rocket car, B, be able to get his own money down by in such most markets, and C, not fucking touting. Fuck him, don't give him a penny. Again, just to be clear, if you can have an edge in a big market in like the NFL, the EPO, or wherever else, you should be able to make a living off of them. And then there are touts who bet into the small markets, and he's betting ahead of you. If the market doesn't give a shit about his bets, why should you? Fuck him, don't give him a penny. And again, I mean, if you're betting the small markets and you're not moving them and you're not earning, and you're touting, again, go fuck yourself. And then there are cases where the markets do respect the touts. To the any extent there was ever any value in the picks, it's gone by the time you bet. This is also known as front running. You're getting the minus EV leftovers while this asshole front runner is getting the good stuff. Fuck him, don't give him a penny. There is no honorable way of touting. There's no honorable way of selling your edge of the markets. The honorable way to earn money from having an edge is to bet it and kill what you eat. And the tout scum have multiplied since legalized gambling. They're everywhere. They're on television these days. I mean, you see them on. I watch Mets games, and they're going to talk about DraftKings and the rest of it and all that crap. So, I don't know. The world's getting worse, and I miss grooving. All right, shall we adjourn to indoors?
So before that, did you actually hear any of the wind in the past 2 minutes? Because I muted myself, so I think I found a way around that. I just have
to answer your question. No, I did not hear the wind, but I mean, we could roll with it however you want. It's just going to be tricky if we're having a two-way conversation. It's windy.
Sure.
Oh, actually, let me. You gave some background before, but just to talk about everything that happened. So Rufus Peabody and Jeff Ma did their Bet the Process podcast, and they invited me on for politics podcast, and I agreed. I went on to the pod and I talked politics, and then I told them in advance that I had a thing afterwards. So when we wrapped up the politics, they were waving me goodbye, basically, and I pulled a Columbo and said, just one more thing. And then we proceeded to talk about Seville's thoughts about them, about my personal views towards how tout-friendly their podcast had been and still was, both in terms of content and in terms of the guests they're having on. After the pod was released, I was alerted to the fact that the podcast I was loyal to, one Brian Bullock, had a past that was just as tout-friendly, if not more so, than Bet the Process. However, admittedly, this was back when you were up and coming. We would have had this discussion previously, but I certainly was going to have it when you. We'll talk more about the kitty later. When Grooven passed, we lost our best ally against the tout scum who desperately want to grab a piece of the pie of the legal sports betting explosion. You supported their ilk in order to produce content and gain earballs, as you said. That was bad. Bad Bullock. or of Chicago. But upon reflection, what I did was actually worse. Not the calling out of Jeff and Rufus. That was the good part. Bad Jeff, bad dog. But supporting podcasters who aren't taking a hard line against touts was a mistake on my part. And Norm called me out on this, and he was right to do so. I fucked up. You had very low standards when you were looking for guests. Let's both try to do better in the future. And remember, as Springer says, you don't have to hate all touts equally. You just have to hate them all. Note, since then, Rufus has started a business and removed not trying to sell you anything from his profile. RES noticed, and welcome to the tout world. And so now he simply modified his thing to say, not trying to sell you anything yet. Brett Favre 444 had a pretty funny comment about what Rufus had highlighted, basically saying it was kind of the stuff that SBR had up 2 decades ago. Not really showing anything that's breaking new ground, but we'll see what Rufus ends up doing. We can review that later, but that's a topic for another day. So let's get to football. Your call if you want to move inside or do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'll move downstairs. I'll just let me pause this for a minute here.
All right, intermezzo.
And bring it, and I'll bring it downstairs. But yeah, I'll let people know where this breaks off. I want to keep this as one recording, so
understood.
Yeah, I'll come back in a minute here. So once I get downstairs.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, I'm back in now. I guess the wind was a little bit of a problem there, so we've moved into the dungeon where I normally record. So the main part of this podcast here was the NFL draft discussion. I think you've come on the past, I want to say this might be the 3rd year in a row.
It feels like more than that, but you can check the list because you apparently do a pretty good job of keeping track of who.
Oh, yeah, I haven't updated it in a minute here, but it looks like the last one you weren't on was. Oh, actually, we didn't do one in 19. We actually only did draft one last year, and that's hard to believe. I guess last year was the first draft one.
I think we generally do the NFL preview. Adding the draft is kind of a new thing, apparently.
Yeah. So, all right. So yeah, let's just kind of get into it because there's obviously a main storyline. Like the first 2 picks are well known. The 3rd pick has been floated around a little bit, and that's what's got me worried because the past month I've been excited, I've been sad, I've had like all sorts of emotions because the Niners are my team here. So I guess before we get into that, we had some discussion last year. I think we were, there was a lot of uncertainties about the draft last year because there was COVID had just started and they were canceling those individual workouts, and there was going to be a lot less data to work with. So the thing I wanted to start with was a comparison of last year versus this year in terms of how the draft data, or I guess just the whole process, how different it is, or if it's different at all between then and now.
So at the time, if you would ask me, I would have told you I was very concerned about the level of data that we'd have for the 2021 draft. We weren't sure what kind of college football season we were going to get. We certainly didn't expect to have a combine, and we didn't actually end up having a combine. But at the time, I wasn't sure what kind of information we'd have heading into the 2021. As it turns out, it feels like we got if not a best case scenario, then something close to it, because there were some players that opted out, but most of the potential stars played. We got a fair amount of data. We were able to do pro days this year. We did not have a combine. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with the level of information I have at my fingertips. If you had told me that this is what I would have at the time last year, I'd have been surprised but pleased. So I would say apart from the players who opted out for 2020, Those are obviously situations where we would have liked to have seen what kind of position they're in these days. I'd say we did a pretty good job, or at least where we should be happy with the kind of information we have for most players.
Okay. All right. And as far as the on-field production from last year's rookies, did I know that we had maybe some discussion about potential maybe more variance, or maybe this was just something I was thinking of. Maybe there might be more variance from
Well,
last year's.
I think it was certainly possible. I don't really keep track of the amount of like variance you get from a draft class from year to year. Like some draft classes just sucked,
Yeah.
and some had a lot of stars, and so like it's a box of chocolates, I guess. And last year's was no exception. Like Chase Young was amazing. Burrow was. I think we were happy with what we saw from Burrow before he got hurt. Tua did a good job of grabbing QB wins. I wouldn't say he necessarily played all that great, but I mean, he was a rookie quarterback, and they're supposed to develop. I mean, Herbert was a really big surprise. I had kind of lower expectations for him, but they did a great job of fixing some of the holes in his game, and he was pretty phenomenal for the Chargers. I think they have to be really, really happy with him. So, I mean, we saw some variance there, but I don't know if we saw more variance than we might expect.
Okay. All right, and then the next part here was about player evaluation, any differences, and I think you kind of touched base on a little bit of it, but you also had some more thoughts here according to your answer to that outline.
So let's. I guess there's a few things. So when we have the combine, we can, for the most part, trust all the numbers we see. Like someone may cut weight or try to load up on carbs for the week before, depending if they want to get heavier or lighter for the draft. But for the most part, again, we're getting them as they are. We could trust the heights, we could trust the weights, we could trust the 40 times, whatever else. With these pro days, we've seen a lot of sub 4.4 40s. And a lot of the other guys performed quite well. And as I wrote here in the thing, I'm a NASCAR fan. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So on your pro day, we should be seeing the best possible version of you on the fastest track you guys can produce, whatever else. I mean, but this has been true for pro days for decades. So when we're comparing pro days to pro days, for the most part, we're comparing apples to apples. When you compare them to the combine, you're not. It's apples to oranges there, a little bit there. So you have to make adjustments for that. But for this year, there was no combine, so it's all pro days, all the information you get. So that's fine. I don't mind that at all. We were able to get film on players. There for the players we opted out, we had to go to previous years. That is what it is. But the statistics, this was a fairly normal season. Most teams were playing against teams from the conferences. So you didn't have any case where a team played most of their games against teams of wildly different talent levels to them, where you wouldn't really get good data. I am happy with what we were able to get from this year in scouting, in stats, and in terms of the pro days. This year feels fine. If you fuck up the draft, if I fuck up in the draft, no excuses.
Okay, and I see that you had mentioned that that there could be some issues with if the new normal is opting out. I'm presuming you mean opting out of like the seasons, like out of like their.
I don't think that's going to be viable because I mean you're only really allowed to due to the COVID. What I'm actually more concerned about is a cascade effect. So the NCAA has allowed players to come back for an extra year. There are a lot of reasons for this, but what this means is a lot of spots on the roster that were supposed to happen, more probably a lot of spots starting that were supposed to open up for the newer guys are not going to be available because you have guys coming back, which means this draft class in general is smaller than we would expect historically. There's a fewer number of players who've declared. So the future years, until all this shakes out of the system, you're going to have guys where you're going to have less film on the younger guys, and there's going to be just less data on them when they eventually declare for the draft. So it's going to be a thing going forward. And I'm not really sure how we're going to adjust to it. If we're going to see a lot of players suddenly start to only get playing time in their junior or even senior years. Historically, that has been a knock on a guy. Why didn't you just start a job earlier? But here they've got a pretty good excuse that the spot that normally they would take in just wasn't available. So
Yeah, and
we have to just look.
And I guess that's not too uncommon in like the powerhouse programs anyways. Like some of those guys in the big programs aren't going to get more than a season or two, especially if like say like I don't even know who sits behind Lawrence at Clemson, but you know that guy isn't going to get a chance to start until next year. I don't even know who
The
it was.
irony is because I
Oh,
think
I forgot. Never mind. That guy did
test.
get a couple starts. Never mind because
Yeah,
of COVID.
exactly. But it wasn't expected. No one.
Yeah.
No, no reasonable expectations to. So yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't the right example, but yeah, you get the point. Yeah, like it is there is examples of it, but not like it's not commonplace.
Yeah.
So okay. So as far as like the past year, I guess I mentioned the past year, but you kind of broke it down just three things that you had thought of that you've changed about your own evaluation process as far as the draft goes. I know you've touched base on a few of these things in the past, but you could kind of maybe expand on them or just summarize what
So sure.
we discussed.
So the three changes that I could think of, the first was wide receivers. A few years back, I had Laquan Treadwell as my number one wide receiver in the class, and he didn't pan out. And I did not want to just chalk that one up to random variance. I felt like I had fucked up there. And what the modification that I made was I discounted contested catch skills and upgraded separation skills. Where Treadwell had excelled in college was he had a large frame, a large window that he was able to give his quarterback. He's able to win 50-50 balls. And in the pros, first of all, he just couldn't get open in the first place. And second of all, he wasn't winning 50-50 balls from against cornerbacks that were just better at him. They were able to get in position and put his quarterback in a bad spot. And this separation matters more than I had accounted for. You don't want to win a 50-50 ball. You just don't want him to be a 50-50 ball in the first place. Sure. Get open, give your quarterback a window to hit you where bad things aren't going to happen. So that was one thing I had to fix.
And yeah, so before you go into the next point, I just wanted to name drop. He went to the high school that's like 20 minutes away from me. So
I assume he's able to get open in high school.
I think, I don't think he had a problem in high school, given some of the athletes in this area. I think when you're a pro talent, you could, he was a pro talent. He got drafted by the pros, but when you're a pro talent in high school, you know the kind of stats that those guys can put up.
I'm sure it's amazing stuff. And here's the thing: there's a lot of different ways you can get open. You can get open with speed. You can get open with agility. You can get open with just sharp cuts and good route running skills or zone recognition skills. Like, you don't have to be the fastest guy or the quickest guy in the world, but you do have to know how to beat or at least learn how to beat NFL defenses. And I have to account for that. I have to see some way of you being able to make a living in the pros. And so that's basically what it comes down to. Next thing. So this is something I'm going to have to do going forward. I need to modify my linebacker grading because I'm so terrible with names. I don't remember. You know what? I'm going to look this one up. But there's one one linebacker upon watching the film that I felt I'd pretty clearly whiffed on. So, I might find this one a little later. But in any event.
Like whiffed in terms of like you thought he was going to suck and he did well, or vice versa?
No, whiffed in terms of where my draft grade for him on. And then I watched the film. I was like, just no way. This guy is not going to be. I think my draft gate had him maybe a fringe round 3 or more likely day 4 candidate. Let me actually look up who it is because
Okay.
that many linebackers in the draft.
Okay.
But let's see. You know, I don't want to have there to be dead air.
In the meantime, I got a kitty on the camera here.
Kitty. You know, let's have some kitty time.
Yeah, that's Bella.
You know, and I have to look this one up later, and I feel guilty
Okay,
about that.
no problem.
But the key takeaway is with linebackers, I need to pay more attention to their range and coverage skills and less to what linebackers used to be responsible for, which was attacking the line of scrimmage and cleaning up, beating blockers, or sometimes working their way through traffic. That's not really what it's about for linebackers these days in terms of their base responsibilities. I also have to think about this for safeties as well. One of the things we've seen is that we've seen more linebacker safety hybrids where teams are looking for speed, teams are looking for coverage ability and range, and I need to value that more because teams are valuing that more. It's more important in the modern NFL. And basically, the stuff I have in my grading systems, they're legacy systems, stuff that I built years ago and then keep modifying and tinkering with. And just sometimes they become archaic. And my linebacker grades at this point, I feel, are a bit archaic. Speed matters more than I'm valuing it, and I have to take that into account. So that's
and maybe this would be a topic for another podcast, but I'd like to hear like a breakdown of like most important to least important positions, and I think we have a general idea of like some of the most important, like the most important to like the most important being like quarterback, and you know some of the least important being like running back. But I'd be curious to hear your like in between rankings and how much they've changed. But like I said, that might be a podcast for like September.
So it's funny, you and me both would like to solve for that because there are positions where the average value of a guy is pretty high, but there isn't going to be as much variation. And so let's talk about like left tackles. Left tackles are pretty freaking important, but is a great left tackle like Sewell more or less important than a potentially elite wide receiver tight end like Chase or Pitts? And that's a really big question. And some of the attempts to answer it, let me just say, I don't feel really answer the question. And I don't really have the answer.
Okay.
But my sense is the delta on wide receivers and Pitts as a unique tight end, a truly dominant tight end and wide receiver could add more value than a dominant left tackle.
Okay.
And so I can see why Chase and Pitts might come off the board before Sewell.
Okay.
So,
okay.
So let's.
But okay, so yeah, you get back on track. You were. So I don't know if you had got done talking about the linebackers, or if you wanted to jump into your next point.
No, let's jump into the next one because here's the big one. Here's something where I don't really know how I'm going to fix it, but I feel like I need to acknowledge some major errors. The first, Deshaun Watson. Now, in his case, I liked his film, but red flagged him due to arm strength. And I was just wrong. Like, he does have an arm strength to succeed in the NFL. He has great processing speed. He makes good decisions. He's accurate. And you put that all together, he has plenty of arm strength to beat defenses in the NFL. So as fixes go, this is kind of the easy one. No longer have just a red line for arm strength and acknowledge that quarterbacks could win in different ways. And if they have this other stuff that can compensate for arm strength. So that one wasn't easy to fix, but I got that one wrong. Next one is Josh Allen. So he was red flagged for accuracy. At Wyoming, he did not have a high completion percentage. The feeling was, if you're not beating defenses in Wyoming, how are you going to do so in the NFL?
Yeah.
Buffalo knew better. Their front office and coaching staff saw that his delivery had correctable flaws. I did not. I missed that. And they corrected those flaws, and they enabled him to become a better player relative to the competition than he was at Wyoming. And let me say that again. He is better relative to the players he's playing with and against than he was at a non-power conference school, and he's now in the NFL. So great job.
Yeah, that was the thing that, to me, not even knowing that much about him, other than like some of his size was obviously a benefit to to his stock, but like he, and obviously his athleticism, but like the fact that he was at Wyoming and couldn't dominate at Wyoming, um, you know, I I didn't understand it, like his hype, but I could say that I was wrong about that, at least at this point.
Yeah, and I was wrong about it too. I mean, we all saw that he had a gun, he had a cannon. The question was like, how are you going to do better in the pros than you in college? And he has. And the Bills front office and coaching staff have done a very nice job lately. I have been impressed by them. So like, I don't know, that they're building something going forward, and I need to try to look to see if I could see correctable flaws in guys that might go a lot higher than their college stats might suggest. And so that's something I need to work on. And we see that with, again, Justin Herbert, another guy I got wrong. His red flag was decision making. Like, he had some great plays at Oregon. There were plays when he looked like a guy who should go in the top 5 or 6, but he also had a lot of shitty ones, particularly when plays broke down. And I did write that he might have a high ceiling with better coaching, but that was the kind of thing that I'd expect maybe in 2 or 3 years. And no, he came in as a rookie and was great. Like, we saw pretty quickly that he was able to play in the NFL, and he's done a nice job so far anyway. So like, maybe he gelled with a charter system that he was more amenable to his skills in the Oregon system. Maybe he grokked it better. I don't know. But this is a miss on my part, and I need to evaluate what I did wrong. So again, we're seeing some errors here. But here's my favorite of all.
Oh, God.
Joshua Bollinger Lippincott Rosen. So here's the thing. The 49ers traded up to number 3 overall. They have Rosen on their roster. They've already talked about possibly not being enchanted with Garoppolo. So here's the play. You take Chase or you take Pitts. You then have an amazing set of skill talent. You turn the reins over to a former 10th overall pick, Mr. Josh Rosen, and you watch that offense dominate. That's the plan. That's the play. Let's do it.
I can't. Yeah, it's funny looking back on that, because I think there are so many people guilty of saying like he was probably like the most NFL ready from that.
Look, I wanted the Giants to draft him, so what the hell?
That's not a case of like, because I feel like there's some quarterbacks that if they were drafted by a completely different, like a different team, they would have a completely different career. I don't get that impression from him.
So I don't get that impression from him either. And it's not just like the fact that, so he's been in some awful situations and he's done absolutely nothing with them. Like some generally historic numbers of terribleness. But like, I also get the sense he's not exactly putting the world on fire in practice either. Like, yeah. I think the teams would have treated him differently if they acknowledge, all right, there's not a lot of talent around you. There's not much you can do on the game days. We know you're sucking, but it's not your fault. I don't get the sense they feel that way.
Yeah.
So if they don't feel that way, then maybe he hasn't shown it anywhere yet. But the 49ers kept him. They didn't have to keep him on the roster. They did. So I don't know. Maybe Shanahan has some dreams for him. We'll see. The 49ers can play their cards close to the vest. Who knows?
I'm not looking forward to this part of the discussion soon, because I'm going to be crying soon. But before we get into talking about the Niners for this year a little bit more, the one question I did want to mention was the 17th game, and I was curious to get your thoughts on if you thought there was going to be any impact draft wise when it came to the 17th game? Like if you thought that maybe teams might approach the draft in a different way.
So adding a 17th game does increase the importance of depth. You're going to have marginally more snaps devoted to non-starters. So you might want to be slightly less top heavy than you would otherwise be, but I don't really know how that would affect one's drafting. I don't know like what kind of actionable information that gives us. One thing, by the way, I just want to mention about the draft, there was one unique player, a guy by the name of Quinn Miniers. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name. He's a center for UW Whitewater. I watched some of his tape from the 2019 Division III playoffs. They didn't play in the fall. They moved their football season over to spring. So he didn't play that in the fall. He was invited to the Senior Bowl and had a monster Senior Bowl week. Just really impressed the NFL. So he's one of those guys who, yeah, you couldn't really get much out of from the film, but clearly the NFL team saw something from him. Great senior week, and he's a guy who kind of in an odd situation probably moved himself into day two. So just an unusual year and just an unusual story.
Okay. All right. So let's dive into the soup du jour of the day, the draft itself, and it's looking pretty exciting, at least from an NFL fan point of view. That as a Niners fan, it's basically third pick, and like the third pick is going to determine how I feel. I really don't care about the rest of the draft as a Niners fan, but I should like at least know a little bit more about it, about what goes on after that. So I'll obviously be watching it, but from your perspective, what are some of the things you're looking forward to most about the draft?
Actually, hold on. Let's take a step back.
Okay.
When you first heard about the 49ers trading up, like what was your snap reaction? What was your in the moment? How did you feel?
I mean, I thought it was great. Like I personally never. I thought that kind of like Kaepernick. I thought that we got as much as we could out of Jimmy. Like we probably got more out of both than I probably thought. Maybe even more so Jimmy than Colin, because we drafted Colin in the second round. But the fact that we got a Super Bowl appearance out of him was more than I ever anticipated. So just based on the few years that he's been healthy, like I never thought he was a guy who would carry the team. Like I kind of think he proved that. Like I don't think anyone ever thinks of him when you're down by a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Like, who do you want? And he's not going to be.
At this point, I don't think the 49ers fans think of him that way.
Yeah.
When the 49ers they were demolishing teams, you kind of thought of them as a team with a great defense and an epic running game. And that's kind of how they destroyed Green Bay. They destroyed them on the ground in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, and they had a good rotation of running backs with obviously the line play was great, but just but it was never Jimmy that was tearing teams apart. He wasn't he wasn't the one that teams were really worried about.
It's funny, if we go back to the Super Bowl, you change one pass of his, you take one overthrow and you put it on target, and his entire career's arc is change the arc of that pass, you change the arc of his career.
Yeah.
So,
I had a disgusting feeling about that game towards the end of the first half when they didn't, when they basically just kneeled down, I think.
Yeah, that was an odd moment, but they also at some point took a 10-point lead in the second half.
They did. They had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So
with the ball.
I mean, they had it, but hat tip to Kansas City. But so going back to the original reaction though, I was obviously pretty excited just because I felt like we've seen the best of what Jimmy can offer, and even when he's healthy, like obviously people love to see the win-loss record the way it is, and yeah, obviously that's the important stat that team like fans care about for the most part. But if you really look at who caused those wins, I don't. He wasn't like the quarterback like Manning or Brady that was actually leading a team to the win. He just happened to be behind center when they won.
Yep, that's the Mac Jones problem, right
So
there in a nutshell.
so so yeah, and so my initial reaction, like, I certainly don't know enough about these guys in college to make like judgment calls on them, but like the fact that before the trade even occurred, like, and again, it could be faulty reasoning for me thinking like this, but I don't think anybody had Mac Jones even in their top 20. Let's say,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
he was a fringe candidate. He could have jumped in the top 20, but no, he wasn't. No one had him number 3 or
No,
anything close to it at the time.
yeah,
So let's. I want to go back then to before the trade when Miami had the 3rd pick. There were some thoughts of, are they going to take a successor to Tua, or are they going to stick with him and try to grab a wide receiver, or maybe Pitts, or even Sewell, who knows? But so once they traded down, we all figured the 49ers were trading up for a quarterback. And my immediate thought at the time, I believe, was Fields. Because I think at the time there was already a sense that the Jets had locked on to Wilson, and we know Lawrence was going to be off the board. So that was my initial thought. And then when the Jones news broke, I was surprised, and I wanted to see, maybe I'm missing something. I mean, Shanahan's a pretty bright guy, but it's also bullshitting season. So I went back and looked.
yeah,
And so, you know what? Actually, let me pause 1 second. Let me just first ask the question: what am I looking forward to most about this draft? That was the question you asked me.
yeah.
My answer is this draft looks wild. We're going to have a huge swing with the 3rd pick, depending on whether they go for Jones, whether they go for Field, or whether they go for Lance. There's going to be 1 or 2 potential franchise quarterbacks available after number 3, depending on Fields and Lance both possibly being available. We don't know what their landing spots are going to be. We have 3 elite wide receivers, 2 of them we're not sure what order they're going to go in. We have a pass rush class with huge questions, an incredibly deep offensive line class. This is a situation. So as far as we know, and someone answered this for me on Twitter. So hold on one second while I look up what the answer was. But someone looked up when the latest first defensive player off the board was, and so apparently the answer was in 1957 was at number 10, and in 1983, 8 of the first 9 were on offense.
Okay.
So this year, in theory, we could see 5 quarterbacks come off the board, 3 wide receivers, 2 offensive linemen, and a tight end, being 11 players off the board before we get a first defender taken.
Okay.
So this is a draft unlike any I can remember. Is a very weird and very fun and cool looking draft. So
and people love offense, so this kind of fits into what people like, especially the skill positions.
Yep. So not to steal from you, but your next question was about Trevor Lawrence. So please go ahead.
Oh yeah. So this seemed pretty obvious when I was writing it, but just to get it on air, as far as Trevor Lawrence goes, looking at the odds, I feel like Trevor Lawrence was like a no-brainer even last year. Like we kind of knew, like he was going to be the first pick this year. But like in your time of evaluating the draft, would you say he's like the biggest? Would you say he's maybe the second biggest, maybe to like Luck? I don't know if between the two, like I think those are probably the 2 like that maybe stand out the most.
So suck for luck, and tank for Trevor, I would say are both in the same weight class. They were both players that we knew well in advance these were going to be the guy. Like these
Yeah.
are the guys you wanted to lose for. And like in the year of luck, RG3 did a pretty nice job of closing the gap and giving a clear number 2 overall. And I believe it was the Rams who got a king's ransom from the Washington football team to trade up for RG3. Luck was simply there's just no way. Yeah, you were trading up from the Colts. We're moving on from Mang to Luck. In the case of Lawrence, everyone knew, and unfortunately, the Jets had him and left him off, let him off the hook, and I am still very sad about that. Now, in the case, we also had the tank for Tua, but that didn't really end up working out the same way and were expected. Like the Dolphins were expected, they were clearly tanking for him, and they ended up getting him. But it was a long, strange trip where they ended up winning some games, having the 5th overall pick, and he fell to them because he got hurt. So, but yeah, I think Luck and Lawrence are in the same class.
Okay. All right. So this is the part of the podcast where I
we've gotten to it.
Start to cry a little bit. Because I've made my opinions, like about the Mac Jones. What has he done to leap so high? Is this strictly just the team that traded up for him? Because I'm finding it hard to believe that other teams would be in this position and like thinking that Mac was like the clear, like, and again, maybe like, again, it could be a bullshit smokescreen. Like we've seen that before, but what has he done to get so high on these boards? Is it because they see like that Shanahan has like a certain like type that he's like attracted to? Because like, obviously some of us get attracted to a certain type of of a dating partner, and you end up dating that type. Is it a similar thing?
Yes, I get where you're coming from, and yes, it's true. It's true for all of us. There's what we react to. Is this Shanahan's type? I would have actually said no. If the question was which quarterback in the draft would have been Shanahan's type, my guess would have been Lance. My guess is that would have been the canvas that Shanahan would want to paint on, turn him into the NFL quarterback that he would use to try and get back to the Super Bowl. But you don't know. I mean, Shanahan sees what he sees and likes what he likes. But so, yes, kind of 3 different questions there. And one of the questions is what Shanahan's type. One of the questions is, what does Mac Jones deserve this? And one of the questions is, are there any other teams that were looking at Jones in this way? And the only other team that, if you had told me they were looking at Jones as their quarterback for the future, the successor, you tell me that about Elway in Denver, yes, I'd believe you. This is a team that has a type. They've shown to have a type. And you tell me that stop doing that, that Jones fits that type, yes, I believe it. But I also would have suggested that they could just sit tight and he'll fall to them. So Elway's the one guy I could have imagined perhaps being a little pissed when the rumors broke that 49ers were trading up for Jones. Now, here's the big question. What has Jones done to deserve all of this? And the answer is nothing. None of this is his fault. And so Diggs offered the steelman defense argument for taking Jones here. And just for those of you who don't know, a steelman argument is the opposite of a straw man. It's making the strongest possible defense of an argument. And this is a direct quote from Diggs. I just wonder how much the situation is informing Kyle's decision. What if he just wants a guy who's young, cheap, accurate, can stay on the field, and doesn't turn the ball over every other throw? That's not worth much. Teams normally drafting at 3, but the Niners are not that. And he's right. Like, this is not a normal situation. This is a very, very strong roster, very, very strong offense. A lot of skill talent around him, drafting number 3 overall, and they need a quarterback. So is it possibly correct to go for the guy who they can trust to safely run an offense when everything is doing well? And let's look at Jones for a second. Jones offers the 49ers a guy who can be accurate when things are going well. His senior year numbers are incredible. 11.2 yards per attempt, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. These are just insane numbers. And this is playing in the SEC. Now, admittedly, he doesn't face Alabama's defense in a game situation, but even so. So the theory is you would take Jones as a plug-and-play guy, put him in, watch the offense go. Okay, that is a reasonable argument. However, the 49ers fan base is revolting, just like the football fans of the clubs that joined the Super League. And the reason the fans are revolting is because the Crimson Tide, they dominated with Jones, but it wasn't because of Jones. They had at the time 2 amazing wide receivers, a dominant offensive line, a great running game. They are just loaded with talent. And they generally won on every play, most battles, regardless of what Jones was doing. And so he was in a tremendous position to succeed. He was not particularly skilled at reading defenses. His play broke down under pressure. He did not impress with his ability to work through his progressions. He was the guy who didn't fuck it up when things were going well, when there was a play to be made. And look, there is some value. You have this guy, he's your number one read, he's open, throw it to where he can catch it. Jones did that. That's worth something. That you can win with that.
Yeah.
And if that's all Shanahan wants, if that's what Shanahan is going for, then okay, that's what Jones does bring to the table. He's the guy who in practice, like he'll throw the ball into the bucket. That is good. Some guys can't do that. Some guys can't throw a football into a bucket like 20 yards away. Like, sure. All right, so I point in Jones' favor, but that's not enough. He does not impress with his mobility. He does not impress when the play is breaking down. So if he's the guy, I don't think he's going to be the guy to bring the 49ers back to the Super Bowl. And the 49ers fan base, for the most part, feels the same way. My sense is that the Jones thing is something, it may have been a trial balloon, it may have been a smokescreen. My sense is that's not the name that we're going to hear called. The name I'm expecting to hear with the 3rd overall pick is Lance. At the time, I was expecting Fields, but Fields has since had his draft stock drop when it was revealed he is playing with epilepsy.
Yeah,
I know
that's when it broke down for me too. When I saw that, I kind of thought that was the end of Fields, at least in my eyes.
Now, my sense is
for
that
the 3rd pick,
would have
anyways.
known that in advance.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the teams would have knew and the general public would not have. Because, like, if they knew at Ohio State, every team in the NFL has connections at Ohio State. Like, all of them do. Because, like, every team in the NFL has connections at Alabama. You just do.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sure they knew. But the general public didn't know. And so, yeah, Fields is in a different spot. We might see him drop. But Lance is still, he's a guy, like, the knock on Lance is he played in North Dakota State and he didn't play against elite competition. But he was just as dominant on film as Jones was. And it was clearly more due to the stuff that Lance was bringing to the table, not just because of his teammates. Much more mobile. Just I feel like he had a better arm. A bit of a hitch in his delivery that he needs to work on. But, like, I could see Lance being a great NFL quarterback. I don't see Jones being a great NFL quarterback. I can see him possibly being a guy who can play, but not the guy who you win because of.
Sure.
So Shanahan, he's earned a genius label, like with what he accomplished in Atlanta, with what he's accomplished in San Francisco. And if he wants a quarterback that he can execute his vision, like, maybe that's Jones. Like, Fields has a serious medical red flag. I feel like that leaves Lance as the guy. Um, but look, Shanahan, like when you're a genius, maybe you start believing your own bullshit. You can believe you can win with anybody, and maybe he thinks he can win with Jones. And
Yeah,
if that's what happens, it's going to suck for me. It's going to suck for you.
we've in all walks of life we've seen ego get the best of people. So, and NFL is certainly no exception to that. Um,
Yep.
so,
So
it,
this leads into our next question.
so yeah, so my initial, I think one of my initial reactions when I was promoting the podcast with you was like discussing like the BS meter that goes on in a given NFL draft cycle, and my thought process was just to presume that it's all BS, and I feel like it's safer that way to presume that everything that we hear up until the actual picks are made is just that BS. Um, so like when you're analyzing, what the experts, and I put that in quotes, whatever, it could be real experts too, but a lot of them are quote unquote experts. When they share their news or whatever, do you have like a way that you personally try to decipher what the BS is and what's not leading up to the
So,
draft?
so, um, let me just give you an example. In the case of Wilson to the Jets, I believe it. Like, I don't think that's bullshit. My rule with trying to evaluate bullshit is, well, my rule, it's not my rule. It's the rules I got from Professor Massiarello at Claremont McKenna College, the late Professor Massiarello.
Okay.
You don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect, and you get what you reward. So here's the situation. If someone is incentivized to bullshit you and you have no way of verifying their statements, then yes, you are in the running to receive some bullshit and you should act accordingly. Having said that, let's talk about a specific case. The 49ers don't really have much to fear either way. No one is going to be able to trade up ahead of them. Like the Jaguars pick is not for sale, the Jets pick is not for sale.
Right.
So the 49ers at this point, they have free reign. They can do what they want. They don't really have any incentives to lie. A lot of teams do. They don't. So if they wanted to, they could be honest and let the draft start at number 4 with Atlanta. And that's actually a pretty highly unusual situation. We really don't generally get to see a situation where the first 3 picks are known, and obviously they're not known this year. So we get a situation where the 3rd pick is pretty huge. And it also is a team who traded up for it, which adds to the drama. When the Jets traded up there, we kind of knew that it was for Donald with the information that we had available. The 49ers, maybe they're locked on Jones. Maybe we really do know who they're going to pick. And we're rejecting it because it seems so fucking dumb to us. So, look, in my case, it'll be money gone. And in your case, it'll be tears. You'll be crying in your beer. So, like, we'll see.
Well, I'm happy. I got invited to a Zoom call with some friends of mine for the draft. So like, it's gonna be like a very early I'm gonna know how I'm gonna feel the rest of the draft like pretty early on. So I think another person in the call is like a Lions fan, so he's notorious. He knows what the situations with Detroit. He just knows that they're gonna fuck up whatever they do. So it'll be fun. It's a lot of mourning, so it'll be a good time.
I like the optimism.
Oh yeah, but I really, honestly, I can't like with what the Niners have actually done, even in the past 10 years. I mean, most teams would be thrilled to have 2 Super Bowl appearances in the last 9 or 10 years, and given that they didn't have like a Hall of Fame type of quarterback either of those times, is actually kind of a uh, a pat. You got to give the team credit for building a team good enough to take them to the Super Bowl during those times where they didn't have like an elite type of quarterback. So I can't really complain, but I will.
Well, look, the Jets have been to 4 AFC Championship games in my lifetime, and they've lost all 4 of them. So just be happy with what you got.
And there was what 2 or 3 with Sanchez, right?
So we had 2 in a row with Sanchez.
God, that's
Our best team was actually with Testaverde, but we faced a really good Denver team. And then there was the Mud Bowl in '83 against Miami.
yeah. The Sanchez. That's just like just looking back on those years. That's just such a weird like anomaly
So
of.
we asked him to do as little as possible. We had a great defense. And I mean, we actually had we had the Colts on the ropes early in that game just because things broke our way early, but then Manning said enough of this shit and took the game over. And against the Steelers, we fell behind early, but we rallied late and we had a chance to drive for a late lead and just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So we had our chances in both games.
It's just like one of those things that'll like if you look back on it like in 20 years, even now it's still weird, but even in like 10 or 20 years, you'll be like, butt fumble guy almost led you to 2 Super Bowls. But I digress.
Look, I mean, if we'd gone to one of them, I would have been so happy, but it didn't work out.
Right.
So
yeah.
Maybe next year, man. Maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. The infamous words. So do you think do you think the Niners or the Falcons hold like the key to like the whole draft? Because we obviously know who the first 2 picks are, but kind of have an idea of the 3rd pick, but maybe we don't. What are your thoughts on that?
So they both do, but in very different ways. In the case of the 49ers, like it's who they're going to take. Their pick, none of the first 3 picks are available for trade. So like they can do whatever they want. And there's a kitty. The Falcons are in a different situation where their pick is probably available. So every other team in the draft who wants to move up, if they want to grab their guy, if that's Lance or whatever else, or if it's Fields, who knows, like they're the broker. They're the team that's going to get paid. And it's who they choose to trade with. So I would say in this case, it's actually the Falcons, but it's the 49ers who determine just how much leverage the Falcons have. Like if the 49ers take Lance, then the Falcons have a bit less leverage because Fields, he's seen a stock drop, and Jones, we don't know if everyone else loves Jones as much as the 49ers might. But if it's Lance, I get the sense that there's a lot of teams that would love to end up with him. So we'll see.
Okay. All right, you answered the question that Dylan Mervis, about the 40 times. Did you want to go through the team by team breakdown before we ask the couple listener questions that we got, the couple other ones, or do you want to go over the listener
Actually,
questions?
no. I'd rather do the listener questions first and then hit back on the teams.
Okay, cool. All right, so the first question here, not really related to the draft, but one you could still answer from Audacity of Hoops, former guest on the pod a couple months ago. Say an NFL team has a win total line of 8.5 with payout odds of over 140, under plus 120. Doesn't seem accurate to say the market expects them to win 8.5 games, but rather something higher, say 8.8. Do you have a go-to method you use to adjust for the payout odds like that?
So the answer is yes. There's a couple different ways. You can use a basic heuristic, in which case 8.8 would be fine. In this particular case, I'd recommend something closer to like 8.75, because you might want to discount slightly on average on these. Now, what I actually do is I try to solve for the implied Pythagorean power rating for each of the team. And then I'm going to have my expected win totals and my variance from that. So what I do is really complicated, but just for something simple, yeah, you can absolutely use something like this. Just look at the midpoint of the line, and that every BIP is 100th of a win. And you might want to subtract slightly the number of wins after that, just because the market adds a hair more wins than you might expect. But that's about it. This is fine as a heuristic.
Okay. And do you think like with this extra game, like do you think this is going to throw anything off like with what you need to do? Like I'm guessing it's just adding a game, so it's probably not gonna matter that much. You probably got the
I've
math behind it.
already modified my season spreadsheets to add for it.
Okay.
Um, one of the things initially because once I started hearing about this, I just think I had actually assumed for some reason, I don't know why, that the 17th games would all be on a neutral field, and they would
Yeah.
all be interconference neutral field games, and so that's what I first added, and then I was told no, just all the games are going to be either home or road for one conference, and so then I made the switch. But otherwise, no, it's just simply you add an additional row of games. It's
Okay.
not really going to mess me up at all.
Okay. Cool. All right, and then I guess this was kind of an easy question based on your answer here on the outline here, but we had Orange Shirt 99 was asking if Burrow was in this draft class, where would Seth put him?
Would you do me a favor and just read my answer? Because I'd rather you get this one.
Okay. Yeah, easiest fucking question I've ever been asked in New York at number 2 overall.
Yes. Burrow is a great prospect. He did not reach quite the level that Lawrence is at this year because Burrow is kind of the flash in the pan, and he had one awesome year at LSU, and he looked great. But without the track record of Lawrence, he would come after Lawrence. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
number
there's got to be some kind of weight in your rankings for somebody who's proven multiple successful dominant years in college versus just one.
So that's one of the things where I've been hearing that teams, and I don't know how much to make of this, that teams don't necessarily like or are happy with the players who have opted out for 2020. I personally made an exception for the players in the Pac-12 because I feel like the conference screwed them with how they handled the start of the season, what they were all told, and I think the players just didn't know what their options were. I think everyone else who opted out did so kind of in the sense of either A, health reasons, which is perfectly fine, obviously, or B, where they were just comfortable with their draft stock and I'm fine, you guys can go along and play. And I think those are the guys that rubbed the NFL perhaps a bit the wrong way, where you stood on 18 and we would have kind of liked to see you play some more games, just prove that you're as good as you look previously. That would have solidified your draft stock. But it's up to the players. The players choose if they want to play this year. And it's like with the drills. If a player doesn't want to run a 40, doesn't want to run the agility drills, doesn't want to lift on the bench, that's up to them. It's all their pro days, all what they want to do. And so the NFL teams, it's up to them to decide, all right, do you want me or not? So it's a two-way street for that.
Okay. All right, and I guess I'll just kind of turn it over to you here because you, before the podcast here, you kind of went over.
I wanted to get a sense of what we're expected to see various teams do.
Okay.
And I'm just going to go quickly through the teams. In the case of Buffalo, they are expected to target defense. So they're picking late in the first round. We'll see what they actually do, but that's their expectation. Miami, so they did this weird thing where they had the 3rd overall pick. They traded back to the 49ers, had the 12th overall pick. And then in kind of a surprise, they traded back up to the 6th overall pick. And what we're figuring there is some elite receiving talent between Pitts, between Chase, and perhaps the worst case scenario, Waddle. But we're expecting Miami to draft an elite threat. So that's the expectation for them. We'll see what they actually do. With the New England Patriots, they're actually one of the wild cards in the draft. So the basic expectation is they're going to sit back and go defense. But what they might do is trade up for a quarterback if one has fallen. So my dream scenario is that the 49ers take Lance, number 3, and then Fields goes fairly early, and then Jones falls, and the Patriots trade up to catch a falling star. And
So
so that would make me so happy.
so to clarify your happiness before we go on to the Jets here,
Yeah.
is your happiness because you don't think he's going to succeed with the Patriots, or
My happiness, let me offer a nightmare scenario.
okay?
My nightmare scenario is that Fields or Lance falls, more likely Fields, and the Patriots trade up and they don't overpay. And now suddenly we have a franchise quarterback to fucking torture us for another 15 years. So, yeah, it is that I don't think Jones is the guy.
Okay.
And I am afraid that Lance or Fields would be.
Okay. I figured that's what you
Good
meant,
clarification.
especially given your Jets fandom, but
Damn
I needed
right.
to clarify that.
Good on you.
Okay.
All right. So the Jets, the last time I looked into them, they were tanking for Trevor and it was going great. Please don't update me if that is wrong.
Yeah, well, just to let you know, it's still November of 2020, so you're okay.
Yeah, and besides, there isn't any football until 2022. So what are we worried
you're
about?
good. You're good.
Baltimore. Some thoughts that they were looking front seven. They, however, are pretty good about staying flexible and taking the value where it comes. So I'm guessing they have a draft board that looks the way it looks. It doesn't look like other draft boards. They know what they like, and they're going to wait to see who falls to them and get the value. So my guess is defense, but we'll see. Cincinnati is actually one of the other key picks in the draft. So I follow some of the analytics people that are pretty big into the Bengals. And from everything I've seen from them is they want Chase. So there's some sense that this is a landing spot for him. There's also some sense this might be a natural landing spot for Sewell. So I want to talk about this later because I want to talk about the offensive line versus wide receiver thing.
Okay.
Cleveland, they're expected to go defense. Pittsburgh, there's some thought that they're looking to go O-line. I've also seen some mocks where they're the first team to take a running back off the board. And they're also talked about as being a potential option to trade up and grab a quarterback. In that, I don't feel like they got a lot of draft capital, so I'm not sure they can make that happen, at least at the top of the draft. We'll see. It's kind of hard to imagine that they'll do so anywhere in the top 10. Houston, their first pick is 67th overall. They are an extremely well-run franchise. Indianapolis, don't know. They're a bit of a blank slate. I don't have any idea what they're going to do. Jacksonville, you might have heard a bit of a sigh there. Not only do they get Lawrence, God damn it, but they also get to field all the overnight trade offers at 33rd overall for the guys who've dropped. Like they're in the catbird suite. A, they get the guy, and B, they get to be the one taking all the phone calls overnight before round 2. It's a nice place to be. I wish that's where the Jets were. In the case of Tennessee, they're apparently going to be the 4th team, or at least I don't know what the teams ahead of them are going to do, but they're the most likely landing spot for the 4th wide receiver off the board. I have no idea who that's going to be. In the case of Denver, like they were expected to have Jones fall to them, and now maybe not. They're a prime candidate to trade up for yet another quarterback. As I said earlier, Elway might have been the one guy who was pissed to discover Mac Jones might fall to number 9. Kansas City has already traded their first pick. This is actually fairly recent, over to Baltimore to pick up O-line help. They realized that their window isn't necessarily going to be all that long. You never know with quarterbacks. So they've traded up, try to fix their biggest weakness that they saw get them wrecked in the Super Bowl. And so now they've added offensive line help. That's their first round pick. Vegas, the thought is they're looking for front 7 help. But as I said in the notes, who the fuck knows with these idiots? San Diego, sometimes they might trade up for Sewell. If not, this is a deep draft for offensive line talent. They're expected to get, who knows, but whoever gets there.
And this, not to be a stickler, but San Diego's going to mourn that it's actually Los Angeles.
God damn it!
Yeah, I said that for all my San Diego listeners. I just had to make sure that 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 you didn't make them
One of
cry
my
even
best
more.
friends from college is a Chargers fan, and he loved when they're San Diego. And yeah, not necessarily so happy that they moved to Los Angeles. Well, so
Yeah.
what?
Okay.
Thanks to you for that correction, though. Dallas. So, talk radio here in New York has talked about how much Jimmy Jones loves Pitts, but they're actually expected to go defense. So, with that,
Yeah. I mean, the like going. Yeah, Jerry Jones. Like just thinking back of the like the Manziel draft. Like I think everybody in the world expected Manziel to go to Dallas. So that was kind of a
yeah,
surprise when he passed on him. Like
Mhm.
he just seemed destined for Dallas. Like so I was kind of, but like this it
People
seems
were
kind of like a
wondering.
similar thing.
All right, so the New York Giants. Uh, their general manager Gettleman is just a simple caveman. So the thought is they're going to go either offensive line or defensive line. But what actually pissed me off most recently from Gettleman is he talked some shit about being willing to trade down. Just said that he has to get value for it. He hasn't yet. And you look at all the years he's been drafting and all the picks he's taken ahead of where perhaps they would have been available, particularly in the case of Quan Barkley, number 2 overall. My only thought there is, what an asshole. So then we have Philadelphia. They're one of those teams that are perhaps looking to grab wide receiver. The Washington football team are, from what I've heard, looking to go for offensive line help. Deep draft for it, so ask and ye shall receive. Chicago, they're another potential team that is perhaps looking to move up to grab a quarterback. Didn't work out so well for them last time. Also possibly offensive line help. As with Washington and such, apparently there's a lot of teams that are looking for offensive line help. So we'll see if there's a rush on offensive linemen. Detroit, there's some talk of actually them just sitting tight and getting Fields. That's one possibility. They were apparently looking at either Chase or Waddle. Both those guys might be off the board when it gets Detroit. I don't know how excited they are about Devontae Smith. So I don't know. I don't know what Detroit's going to do. Maybe they'll even trade up and grab their quarterback. Who knows? Because they do have the draft capital to make a move. Green Bay. So last year, Green Bay was not really happy with what Rodgers wasn't happy with what Green Bay did in the draft. After pissing him off last year, they may be looking to keep him happy and grab some offensive line. We'll see. Minnesota, they're also one of those teams that are looking to grab some more offensive linemen. Given where they're drafting, I believe they're 14th overall. This is a potential landing spot for Darisaw. Atlanta, so they're holding the keys. At worst, like either Lance Jones gets ahead of them, they have Fields as an option. They can also go for Pitts. They can go for Chase for more weapons, or they could sell the pick. They are in the cabin speed. They have an enviable spot. They might have a really valuable pick if Jones is off the board. I don't know what they're going to do. We'll see. Then we just going back to Atlanta for a second. They're going to be the most exciting team to watch. We're on the clock because they may make a pick or a trade. Carolina, they're another team that, as far as I can tell, they want to make a move. They want to make a trade, either down, less likely up for a variety of reasons, but maybe up. I don't know. It's going to be exciting when they're on the clock as well, and they are looking to go offense. With New Orleans, we don't know whether or not they feel like they've got their quarterback of the future on the roster. So are they going to look up to make a move, grab a quarterback? Otherwise, they're looking to go defense, apparently. Tampa Bay, the talk is more front seven help. It's funny if, like, we see that the Chiefs go and add more offensive linemen, and Tampa Bay adds more pass rush or front seven help, doubling down on weaknesses and strengths. Then we have Arizona. The talk for them is they need secondary help. I can understand that, so that might be what they do. with the Rams. They might want to grab some offensive line help to get help their new quarterback, Mr. Matty. I don't know if we've talked about San Francisco tonight at all, but I think the plan for them is to grab Pitts or Chase, turn the offense over to Rosen, and just collect the rings.
Yeah. Let the question mark. Step 3 is profits.
Yeah.
Yep. There we go.
There you go. And then Seattle. So their first pick is 56th overall. I believe their other pick is in New York. So it would not shock me if they wanted to make a move late into the first round to pick a guy who's fallen. Pete's kind of has that attitude, but they're also the kind of team who takes reaches. So who knows?
I'm just picturing a running back. Picturing them trading
just
up for a running back.
This guy's number 14 on our board. He's available at number 30. What are you going to do? Okay. All right. So here's my final topic.
Okay.
Offensive line versus wide receiver. So Mike Greenberg had this spiel where it shouldn't even be a question. Offensive linemen get second contracts at a much higher rate than wide receivers do. So that was his argument. And then you had this different argument from Warren Sharp, where let's look at the guys the first rounders who get their 5th-year options picked up. And these are both two variations on the same thing. Like, who are guys who their teams want to keep? Is that a good proxy for value? And the answer is no. And it's particularly not a good proxy for margin of value at the top of the draft. Because what you're looking for is how much impact can these guys make on your team. And offensive linemen actually do have a decent track record of making some impact, of helping sharpen weakness. The jump from playing offensive line in college to the jump to playing offensive line in the pros is a smaller jump than we see at most offensive positions, apart from potentially running back. So if you're looking to boost your offense, offensive line is actually a decent place to go. But at the top of the draft are where you can get Megatron, where you can get guys like Jones, where you can get elite players who can make a difference on your offense, a noticeable difference from week to week and year to year. And like, these are your weapons. And so this year we have a guy like Pitts, who was unusual. We have not seen a wide receiver of his ilk or his type come along, maybe ever. He might be the highest wide receiver I've ever graded. Sorry, tight end I've ever graded. You have a guy, Chase, who was a monster in 2019. Like, if you look at the guy who had the most 20-yard touchdowns over the last 2 years combined, it's Chase, and he didn't play in 2020. So I could see him being another just a great option. Or you could have Sewell. He's a very, very highly graded offensive lineman, but he's unusual among highly graded offensive linemen in that he's more of a boom or bust type. He's not the finished product that you're generally looking to pick up with a high offensive line pick. He's a guy who could be a monster, or he could end up working on the right side of the line, or even just not really working out. Like, top offensive line pick don't always work. I remember, I think Robert Galley was his name for the Raiders. Orlando Pace took a while to work out. He didn't really hit immediately for the Rams. And Sewell's another guy who might be a bust there. So, like, if you're looking for consistency from your offensive lineman, I don't think you're going to have a good time. I think you have to recognize that you could whiff there too, particularly with the guys at the top of this year's draft. Slater also, like Sewell and Slater, both opted out from 2019. So I don't know. I don't think you can get consistency from the position enough that that's what should be guiding your instincts. Later in the first round, like, yes, wide receivers have more variance in narrow than offensive linemen, but that doesn't mean you rush to safety for offensive linemen. It just means you pick a wide receiver. You might get a guy in the 20s who is as good as a guy who went off in the 10s or the 5s, or you might have a guy who sits on your bench and doesn't see the field. So just embrace the variance, take the best gut, take the value.
Okay.
That would be my argument. So
All right.
all right, now for the most fun part of what we're
Yeah,
going to discuss.
and I don't. The kitty next to me right now isn't the one that we're giving an update on. This is Bella here. But she's she had some issues herself towards the later last year. She actually still has side effects of the issue. She had some ear issues, and she's got um, like a cauliflower ear now with her right ear, but it doesn't affect her hearing and doesn't cause pain. It was causing her pain towards the end of last year, but the other guy that we delayed our serious conversation about earlier, Tenderbiddles, Mr. Tenderbiddles, he's been doing better, like in terms of weight. So this kind of ties into the NFL draft kind of nicely because the only metric that we're kind of using is weight. So
Okay, sure.
if we're using weight, his weight was at a low of 7 pounds, and now it's 9 pounds and 4 ounces or 5 ounces or something like that. So he's gained about 2 pounds 5 ounces in the past 4 months or when he last recorded. So that's pretty good. He had some bouts where like he dropped a little bit. He dropped from like 9.3 to like 8.7 or 8.8 because he had like a week where he was throwing up a little bit. Like he has these sporadic like instances where he just starts ralphing things up. It could be something like he likes plastic, so he likes to chew plastic when he goes on those rampages. And we try to hide the plastic, but he finds the littlest piece of plastic, and like the latest thing he's started to chew is the wife's hair ties. So like the hair ties, like I've actually found a couple hair ties in his puke recently, which is kind of troubling. So we're trying to do a better job of that, cleaning that up. But yeah, he's if we're just going based on weight, he's doing better. But like he still has his instances where he's like going on his rampages and throwing up, and like he has like to, for lack of a better word, not the the best stool right now. Like he's it's been it hasn't been the best. So like I don't know, we decided pretty early on that we weren't gonna do any sort of operation on him, have any surgery. So we kind of squashed trying to know more about what's going on. They wanted to do an exploratory surgery, and we decided that even if they found something, we didn't want to put him through any sort of surgery. So we didn't think that there was going to be any value for us to go that route because we didn't want to put him through that. Plus, the cost would have been quite a bit, and it was the combination of those things that made us decide, well, we're just going to like give him like the best life he can for the rest. Give him like at least what they've advised, like he gets B12 shots. His B12 shots every week now are pretty minimally invasive. Like we just bring him in, and we could probably do it on our own. I think there's a way. I think Jobo, former podcast guest, he was telling me that he does that with his dog, where he gives the dog shots like on his own instead of like taking him to the vet. And I don't know if it would save us any money, but we've been taking him to the vet every week for the B12 shots and getting him away like every 2 or 3 visits just to kind of get an idea of where he's at. And he's not going to get to where he was before, probably where he was like 13 or 14 pounds. And I don't know if he still has the mass or not. I don't know. We're trying to, just try to keep a happy thoughts on it. And like, I guess the weight, that's the only metric that we have access to right now, where we're kind of hanging our hats on that. And like, hey, if he's gaining weight, at least like, at least like all of his hunger that he's showing, like he's been eating a lot more food lately. So I feel like that's a good, just taking the small signs as opposed to like, spending like thousands of dollars on, not to say that he's not worth it, but like, I just don't want to put him through that. So, or we don't want to put him through that, and as a as a pet owner, I'm sure you could understand some of that, especially
Yeah,
with,
no,
he's
no.
like,
It's always a tough choice when
yeah,
you have to put a pet through an operation.
yeah, and he's like, they're like him and his sibling Bella here, who I had on the podcast here, is they're they're like 13 or 14 years old, and it's like I don't know, maybe if it was younger, maybe you'd try to give it a surgery just to give it like better quality of life, because they've only lived a couple years, but they're 13 or 14. I don't want to put them through that and have the risk of like them passing away during the surgery or something like that. So that's kind of the decision that we made as pet owners, and just living with that and just enjoying the time that we have, whether it be year, 6 years, whatever it be, just enjoying what we can and just trying to take the positives on a week by week basis. So
Yeah, that's what it is when you have an older pet that gets a little sick. But again, the B12 shots are working, so I'm really happy for the kitty.
yeah, he gets he gets like energy boost. I don't know. I never really studied what like the vitamin B12 actually is to the body, but he does seem to have an unusual amount of energy after those shots. Like he'll try to jump on the doorknob and try to open it, like when he clearly can't, but he just like gets like he starts meowing at the door and just tries to open the door, and he's never done that before. So I'm thinking that these B12 shots are giving him some sort of new energy. That's, you know, we try not to get annoyed by it. It's because for a whole day he's just kind of meowing at the door. But that's just going to happen. That's kind of the reality now. So it's fine. It's got its own cute little thing to it, I guess. But it's we'll just try to take it a day at a time, week at a time, and hope he has a good quality of life the rest of his life. So.
Yep, good.
So yeah, that was pretty much the uh, cat update. At least it's a little better than the last time. So um, it's just a weekly thing, and we got me and him have a little bonding, each week where I
Mhm.
take him to the vet and talk to him for about 20 minutes, and he meows pretty much not the whole time. He's actually gotten better with the car rides, but he kind of, yeah, he has about like 20 minutes of car ride in him, and he's like, all right, get me out of here. So, um,
Better than my feral fur balls. I can't even get them in.
yeah, yeah. The worst is like when I have to wake him up at like 9 o'clock. He's like sleeping next to my wife, and it's like, we got to go to the vet. Sorry, but I'm sorry to ruin your sleep here, but it's all good. He's doing better, and I just want to see him. I just want to see him live, a good amount of years, left here. I just want to give him the best years that he can get. So
Um, I'm going to tell you something that's going to bring tears to your eyes, Brian. Are you ready?
yeah,
Mac Jones, quarterback, Alabama draft position at Circus Sports, over 3.5 plus 270, under 3.5 minus 360.
yeah.
Okay,
I was
just
afraid. I was afraid of that. Yeah, and they have higher limits too. That's probably like the
last I
best.
saw was two dimes.
Okay. So yeah, I guess that's kind of it. Because with draft props, that's another thing too that we never really got into discussing. But with how much juice there is at certain books, and like how a lot of books just offer yes lines basically, um, it's hard to get a read sometimes on like what the true value is of like where people expect him to go. So I'm always looking for like the highest.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
you're absolutely right. Higher
so
limits do give more information.
so I was comparing Illinois books, like Illinois books. I think the Illinois book that I have used was like offering a minimum or maximum of like 700 profit or something like that, or to win 700. And I saw Bookmaker was like around like 1,000. So I was kind of trusting Bookmaker a little bit more. And now that I hear about Circa, I'm like, um, but yeah, I am actually like an aside. We're going to Vegas in October, me and the wife, and
You all vaccinated?
I do want to go to Circa. Um,
I would recommend going to Circuit Breaker. Are you and your wife vaccinated?
Sorry, what's that?
Are you vaccinated?
Oh yes, yes.
Okay. Oh, good.
That's the main reason why we're planning certain things now. Yeah,
Okay.
we're fully vaccinated as of a month ago. So,
Very good.
yeah. Oh, hi, Kitty.
Yeah, she's being a kitty right now.
Is that the
This is Yao again. Lady Bruce did visit actually for a little while, but she was not as loud as her sister.
Okay. That's not the cat that's looking to mate.
So actually, both of my feral fur balls have not been spayed because if I try to pick them up or put them in a travel case or anything, they will bite and scratch me. They are not down with that. So yeah, I can't actually catch them. I particularly can't catch Lady Bruce. Yao might be a little sleepier, a little lazier. In theory, she's gettable, although you're taking your life in your hands. I can't even catch Lady Bruce to get scratched in the first place. So, yeah, you hear me talking about you.
Yeah, loves hearing her name mentioned.
He's a kitty. All right, are we getting close to where we want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Is there any final thought? I mean, I guess the Mac Jones line odds were probably kind of the final.
Well, again, I'm still like the market says what it says, but my lying eyes tell me what they tell me. They tell me he ain't it, but the market's saying he is.
Yeah, because I keep going back to the idea of how much they gave up, and like, if did they really think that like there was going to be another team that would trade into that spot to draft Mac Jones? And I don't know if that's the right line of thinking. But that's what I keep going back to, and that's why it's hard for me to wrap my.
Go move up to number 3 if this is the guy you're drafting? It is actually a good forensic question. If you're going to be a detective here, like, there's a question: does the story of trading up to number 3 for Jones make sense? And I don't think it does. But I mean, you don't get to minus 360 at Circa without impressing some people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like I said, I don't bet the kind of money that even those limits. So I'll leave it to the people who are actually betting it, and if they're saying it, I'm believing it a little bit more at those kind of books than I am at like my Illinois books that are kind of limiting, or most books anyways. But yeah, anyways, Seth, once again, thanks for joining, and I'll get, like I said, I'll give a breakdown to people about when
timing and all that stuff.
all the timing on all this goes. But enjoy the draft, Seth, and I'm looking forward to September when we can dive a little bit more into whatever other moves might happen, Julio Jones or whatever, and we'll see we'll see if anything else affects the 2021 season. But I'm looking forward to the draft. And again, thanks for joining. Again, everyone, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Just let me say in closing: don't buy picks, don't sell picks, don't blow goats. Rules to live by. This has been the Brian Bullock Podcast.
Yes. And on that note, thanks for everyone once again listening, and take care.